Browsers don't all support the same audio formats. In this lesson, we will learn how to make sure that our audio elements have support for the various formats that are used by various browsers. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to make sure that you catch all tutorials as they come out. Hi folks, so last time we spoke, we were introduced to the audio element, which allows us to embed audio into our web pages. We learned how you can, first of all, put content inside the two audio tags, and the content that you put inside, or the one that we learned about, allows you to say if for whatever reason the browser that the user, the person visiting your web page is unable to embed or include audio into web pages, then what's inside the audio tags is what will actually be displayed. So this is fallback text. We learned how you use the source attribute, which is the most important attribute, to specify the location of the audio file that you are dealing with. And actually, when we left off, I think that was an MP3. And we learned about the controls attribute, which is it's an empty attribute or a Boolean attribute because it doesn't take anything. It's either its presence means something and its absence means something. And the controls attribute means that you want controls to be visible to the user so that the user is able to manipulate the audio element. We learned about the loop attribute, which allows you to say that I want this audio, when it finishes playing, for it to loop back to the start and then play and keep on looping. And then the muted attribute, when it's set, its effect is that the audio will load and it will be in a muted state. So that's pretty much where the things that we covered when we started off. So now here's the challenge. Browsers, or various browsers, because of course browsers tend to, more especially the older versions of each browser, they tend to be a bit diverse in a number of areas, such that certain features that are supported by one browser are not supported by another browser. So audio has an aspect of it that where we find this unfortunate issue present. So in some browsers, there are certain formats of audio files that are supported and certain formats that are not supported. So for instance, for example, say we assumed here when we were including this audio file that all browsers will support an MP3. That's not necessarily the case. You may find that, say maybe Chrome, I'm making an example, say maybe Chrome supports MP3 files, but then the Safari browser does not support MP3 files, or Firefox does not support MP3 files. So even though people who are visiting your web page using the Chrome browser would be able to listen to your MP3 file, but people, would be able to listen to your audio, but people who would be visiting your web page using, let's say, another browser that does not support MP3 would then not be able to get the same user experience. So that's the challenge. Fortunately, HTML5 comes in with something that allows you to deal with this issue. So that's what we're going to learn about. So how does it do it? So inside the audio tags, there's actually another element that you can include, another tag/element that you can include called the source element. Now, of course, the source element or elements. In fact, when you're using source, it does not make sense to use one. You usually use multiple ones, as we're about to do now. What the source element does is that, or rather, before we go there, the source elements have to be before the fallback text. Just put them before. So immediately after the opening tag, come and put your various source elements. So instead of having, when you use the source elements, you would no longer use the source attribute on the audio opening tag itself. So for instance, we would take this away, the source, and we come and put it in the source element. So what the source elements are used for, or the source tag, it's used to say, okay, look, I have various formats for this particular audio file, and I want you to cater for all these formats. So if we come to our folder over here, before we only had an MP3, I went and I converted that MP3 into two other formats. As you can see, the .ogg format and the .wav or WAV formats. So now we would come over here and then we'd say, okay, that's the first format. And then we come and we put a second format, let's say OGG. And then we come and we put our last format, which is WAV. So that's it. And then what this will do is that when the browser loads this, or it gets to interpreting this particular element, it will say, okay, I'm dealing with an audio element. So there's no source here. Okay, let me look inside. Here are a bunch of sources that I can use. Which of these do I support? That's what the browser will ask itself. Get to say MP3 and say, nope, I don't support MP3 files. Gets to OGG and say maybe, nope, I don't support OGGs. And then it gets to the WAV and say, that's the format that I like. So it will then use that. Whereas if, for instance, the particular browser does have support for MP3 files, then it'll get to MP3 and say, yes, I like MP3s, and then that's the file that it'll actually go and download and then use that for your audio element. So that's pretty much how we go about this problem, by using the source attribute. The source element, and then in the source element you would then specify the SRC or source attribute, which is where you will then specify the path to the audio file that you would want to include into your web page. So and of course, when you use sources, these source elements or source elements or tags, you would then not use the source attribute in the audio file itself. So it goes through them, and then the first one that makes sense, that's how it works. The very first one that it says that, okay, yes, this I know as a browser, I know this format, so I'm going to use that, and then I'll ignore the others, and that's how it works. So let's save this, and I'll say, let's call this, oh, by the way, what did I do with my title? Took it away. Let's bring it back. So audio web pages using sources, or using source elements. Yeah, let's leave it as that, and then we come over here. Let's open that up. Oh, by the way, let me just remove this muted attribute and the loop as well. It's fine. We'll just leave the controls for now. Okay, let's see if it plays. Okay, so it still plays as expected in the same way. So really, this will not affect the user experience. Again, this is mainly to make sure that you support various formats. If, for instance, you were to find that, hey, there's this other browser that my users are using, and this browser does not support MP3 files, it does not support OGG files, it does not support WAV files, it supports some other audio file format. What you would do is you would, of course, go and take your audio file, find a way to convert your audio file into the accepted format by this particular browser that you've discovered. and then you'd come over here, add one more source, say whatever the source is. I don't know what other audio source is there. I mean, audio format is there. I don't know, whatever the extension, and then you'd add it here, and then it would then be able to play. It should be able to play in that new browser. So that's how you would use these source attributes. So yeah, that's how you make sure that when you are creating your audio formats, you create them in such, no, sorry, when you're creating your audio elements, you create them in such a way that it will be supported by various browsers. Now, maybe perhaps this would be a good time for me to mention this. Though we haven't quite done this quite a lot here, I've focused primarily on Chrome because I just want to focus on giving you the basics. But once you start really seriously developing web applications and or websites, and you are developing them for a wide audience, that is to say, you are not, for instance, developing it just for the use only by your family members, or just for your colleagues or classmates, whatever the case may be. If you are using it, if you are creating something that's going to be used by the general public, you want to really seriously look into the question of whether or not your website or web app is supported by various browsers. It's one of the pains of web development or front end development, the whole browser thing, the fact that browsers do not always all support the same things. So it's something that you want to start getting into. As you'll see as we go along, I'm going to start more and more looking into how do we make sure that a wide range, or we create the when we're creating our things, our web pages or websites, we create it in such a way that the framework or our skeleton is such that it's designed with the idea that, okay, there are various web browsers out there. So from the word go, let's make sure that we try to support as many of the, the most wide, at the very least, the most widely used ones. So that's something that you're going to have to wrap your mind around, and as you'll see over time, it's not too complex a thing to wrap your mind around, as long as you know that, okay, how do I make sure that in this particular case, we've just did that with audio. We'll see when we get, for instance, to video, when we get to looking into CSS and or the styling, you'll realize that there are certain things that you can do to make sure that you target various web browsers so that at least all of them are covered. So yeah, that brings us to the end of our second lesson on the audio element. And now, not only do you know how to add audio into your web pages, but you even know how to add audio in such a way that you cater for the various types of audio formats that are acceptable by the various web browsers.
You can watch other tutorials over here, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you don't miss out on tutorials as they come out. Have you subscribed? Are you done? Okay, cool.